by the way, the Origin is a special place to be, not because I got the advantage of a lot of the Neapolitans did, you know, growing up in Naples and spending time there. But I've been looking at it now for 13 years while I've been restoring the back and it just sits there and stares at me. I had somebody stop on Main Street and come running over to me and say, "What's wrong with that house? It's just screaming at me. It's so sad. Why, what's wrong?" And so anyway, I really, it's really important to me. Another thing some of you know or don't know, I found Christine and I were sitting on the couch in the Maxfield Inn and we saw trucks disconnecting the power out there. I ran out and said, what are you doing? We're disconnecting the power and the water. I went and talked to Brian Schenck to find out who owned it. It was Joel Smith. So I went to Joel Smith and said, "I'll tell you what, I'll do a proposal to restore it for you." He said, "You work for me? Come in the next morning." I said, "Sure." I could come in the next morning. And he interviewed me. He said, "Well, I don't need somebody to do the inn right now, but I need somebody to be a framer to do some other house that we've got over in nearby town." He said, "So, will you come work for me?" And I said, it was $20 an hour with no benefits. And I said, "Okay, if you don't tear the Orange Inn down, we got a deal." And I did that for 3 years. So it's still here, and we've already avoided one other time it almost got torn down. So let's hope it continues on and it's all in its glory. Like I say, it's a special place to me. Okay, history of Naples Orange Inn. So let me zoom in on it. I think it'd be easier for me to sit down just because there's a lot of data. Also be patient. For those of you that have to leave at some point, I'll be fine with that. There's a lot of information here. And to me, and I talk with my guests all the time about history, history's like a fog. And the trick of a historian, or the skill of a historian, is to remove that fog and make it a clearer and clearer picture. But you never kind of get all the fog away. I mean, you know, you see this, you figure that out. So it's really removing the fog. And so even as I put it together, I say, "Oh, that's why." And then I have to go back and change it. So here we go. I always zoom in from the oldest maps that we have, 1852. I used to think it was 1859, but then I found that in the Ontario County, New York map, there's a little Naples section in 1852. I can zoom in on it there. The red area is the area of importance. And that red area, you'll notice if you really know the streets around here, is the streets were not exactly the same in 1852. Vine Street did not connect to Main Street. It connected to Elizabeth Street. And the church was there all by itself down there and wasn't alongside a road. So that's just very typical. The roads, layouts, and the names of the roads change in Naples. So when you're doing one of these deep dives, you have to keep that in mind. They'll say, "Well, it's on Elizabeth Street," or "It's on Vine Street," or whatever. And you have to understand that, well, that's not the same name. One that was really getting me mixed up was Water Street. You all call it East Street or East Avenue there along Naples Creek. It used to be called Water Street. Well, Water Street's a better name for it, but I guess when they did West Avenue, they said, "Well, they don't have an East Avenue, so So I went on for years. You know, the other one was Cohocton, North Cohocton. You call it Atlanta. I call it Bloods. It used to be the Bloods brothers that started Atlanta, and it wasn't until 1940 they named it Atlanta. So if you're doing all the history that I do, when I did the Underground Road, I tried to figure out why are they getting off the train in Cohocton, and they could stay on the train and go through Canada, you know, through Niagara, Fort Niagara, up that way. Turns out Cohocton used to be called Liberty. It used to be called Freedom. So maybe that's why they got off the train. Anyway, so here you see what I wanted to point out on here, the Lyons Mill, which is, of course, one of my favorite things in the world, the Red Mill. Lyons Distillery, sorry the arrows are so fine, but one of the people in the village asked me, "Well, I live in this building across the street here." Trudy asked me. He said, "Tell me the history of it." Well, it turns out it was the only thing at that time on what we call Mill Street today. It wasn't called Mill Street then. Next to the Red Mill, it was actually a distillery. And of course it was, because whenever you had a mill, back in the 1800s, and you're milling flour, you always had a distillery. That everybody was drinking whiskey then. You wouldn't have a mill and not have a distillery. So anyway, that was the Lyons Distillery. Lyons Home is the one that we're in right now. And then Lyons Store, which is the place that sadly burned down 2 years ago right in the corner, Mechanic Street and Main Street there, or Mill Street and Main Street. The other thing you'll notice on this map is Mechanic Street didn't connect directly to Mill Street. I mean, it connected, but it's not exactly a straight line across. So in the next map, you'll see that that corner building there is right on the edge of the road, but in this view, it wasn't. There used to be a big hill up here. There was only two things on this road, you know, that you could see would be the distillery and the windmill. And it was called Mill Street at one point then too. Okay, so that's important actually for later. So I did this in chapters. There's 9 chapters. They go through time. So chapter 1 is 1859 through 1871, and I called it the prior years. At this point, the Orange Inn didn't exist. So in 1859, Mr. Waldrop lives on Cross Street, and I'll go and I'll show you all this. 1871, Mr. Walters purchases the Thompson property, which was the corner of Main and Mill Streets. So it's right down there where the building burned down right now, where, anyway, down there on Mill Street and Main Street. The Lion House, this, and the Tannery. In 1870, 1871, Walters builds a new 3-story storefront on the corner of Mill and Main Streets, right over there where the Glory Park is now. And all of us seem to know around here that we called it the Wells and Son building, but really it was built by Walters. Okay, so you don't need, we'll get into that. This will actually show what I just said. So in all of these, I tell you what I'm going to tell you in that front thing, and then I take you through it. So you can see here, what I wanted to show on here was that H.H. Walters lived on Cross Street. So at the time, they called it Mill Street, but it's right there. And his house is still there, and I'll show you a picture of it. And H.H. Walters is an important person. That's why I'm starting with him. He was in dry goods and product marketing or something like that, or produce marketing. And you can see there is no Orange Inn there. The future location on Main Street there isn't one there. H.H. Walters, he lived on Cross Street and he sold dry goods. 1859. Next chart. This is his house on Cross Street today. So it's still there. So that house was built a long time ago. The guy who basically built the Orange Inn lived there while he was building it. Okay. So then we get into the next slide, which still shows the future Orange Inn location. It's still empty, right? We're still in 1859. But what was next to it there? We had Parkinson, Mr. Walters, again, who eventually built the Orange Inn, did a shop there. That shop's not there anymore. It would be right next to Doc's office there, kind of in the driveway of the Orange Inn today, but it wasn't there, or it isn't there anymore. And then you had a bunch of stores. You had a post office. Okay? So in 1859, there was a post office right there in what is now Doc Chandler's office, millinery shop. There was the Peak Jewelry store, and then, of course, Lion's store right there. So H.H. Walters also had a store on Main Street, and for your information, in 1859 map, very sad for me, they didn't put any barns on it. They just put the buildings on it. So you don't know where the barns were, unfortunately. They did later in the 1870s. All the maps then, but for some reason they didn't think barns were important in 1859, so they didn't show them. Okay, now we move ahead to 1870, 1871. Now everything that I do research is you can go, it shows you right where I got the information from, so you can go back yourself to those particular journals or whatever and find the exact words. I just copy them out of it. And except for in the case of, like it says, Walters there, because unfortunately it made it put dark purple over Walters, so you wouldn't know to read it, but other than that. So it says right here, Mr. Walters has bought the Thompson property, the Jerry Lyon House, which is one we're in now, the Lee Tannery. Now we hope to get a brick block. So this would have been the block down. The Thompson block at the time was the corner there where the beer place is today and Doc's office is, and where the Orange Inn ends up being. And then over there it says H.H. Walters has commenced which means started, his extensive building operations. It will be remembered that he purchased, it should be, or will be remembered that he purchased the Thompson property, which included the corner by the hotel, the Lyon Homestead, McMill property, Tannery, and the barns across the bridge opposite Cassidy shop. He has moved the barns from the front to the back end of the lot and preparing to put up a nice residence on the site. So 1871, still no Orange Inn, but he's thinking about it. The other thing here, it says, I am Lyon has sold a portion of the, I can read it here. Has sold a portion of the pond lot adjoining the tannery to H.H. Walters, which makes his premises run from Main to Wall Street. So he's purchasing, you can see on the chart there, well, first thing, you have to realize that the pond lot, so behind Artisans and behind the Orange Inn today, right around that area, that was a pond. It looks like it should have been a pond, it was. And it really was a lot of, I mean, it's been there, it was an ashery, it was owned by Lion, and when they took out the aqueduct, they drained the pond and started filling in different areas, but it was a pond there, people used to fish there and stuff. So, so Mr. Walters started buying up the land that became the property of the Orange Inn, and around that time, again, 1871. He also, when he bought the Lion House, you think, what's he doing over there? I mean, we were talking about the Orange Inn. But it turns out he decided since he looks like removed his original shop, he decided to build a new shop right there on Main Street. So somehow I think he had, inherited money or something, I don't know, but he started getting really, doing a lot of things here. So again, this is just around 1871, or just before. So then you say, okay, so this is one of my favorite pictures that I managed to buy online. Believe it or not, I don't know why somebody was selling a stereographic picture of our town online on eBay, but so to tell you what this is, there's really nothing in this picture that's here today, unfortunately. A lot of Naples is like that. You do the fire, people just tearing things down. But that is the intersection of Mechanic Street coming this way, Main Street going this way, so you're basically standing on the roof of Luigi's. And then Mill Street would be just on this side of Wells and Son building. And it says right here, the Main Street front of the dooryard of the old Lion House, which would be this one, Main Street front, now contains a bandstand, a good one, on the south side, and on the corner is a hardware store of E. Wells and Son. This fine block was erected in 1871 by H.H. Walters, who owned the whole corner, the Lion property, and he put it up 3 stories. The third is occupied by the German secret societies, the second by the law office and library rooms of E.B. Pottle, who was a lawyer, and offices of S.I.A. Siemens, and the first floor by the extensive hardware, tin shop, etc. of E. Wells and Sons. So you can see the sign right there. That's why everybody calls that the Wells building. It's since been torn down, but again, it was, people refer to it most of it.
Do you want to do the stereoopticon then?
Well, I was going to. So I brought the stereoopticon, or actually I brought the photograph. And for years I wanted to look at it, and I figured this is a good reason to. And I knew the Historical Society had these opticon photograph, things that you can look through and actually see in 3D. And so I was going to pass this around. You just basically, just pass it around if you like. Just put it up. You don't have to take your glasses off or anything. You may have to adjust the distance of where the card is, and it just slides back and forth. But you can actually see this in 3D. That picture was taken right in when this picture was right around it was around 1876, around that time frame. The 100th anniversary of our town. There it was, July 1876, Main Street looking southwest. Again, the intersection, you can see the Walters building and the Jacques Hotel. So the original hotel. It's one of my favorite pictures. You can see two people move, so you can kind of see their ghosts going around. They try to stay still.
So just one question about that last photo.
Yeah.
Where is Mill Street? Is it the?
This is Flory Park right now.
That's Flory. Okay, thank
This
you.
is the building that was in
right
Flory
here.
Park,
Yeah.
it's just in front of this building.
Okay, so it's right. Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
The
Appreciate
Jacqua House is now the Naples Hotel.
Yeah,
Okay,
No, it's
thank
not.
you.
Well, they moved
the
it.
location.
No, it's not. Never mind. The sport. Anyway, we'll talk about that in a minute. No, the Jacques Hotel got moved.
Yeah.
But the actual Naples Hotel is much further south than that.
Oh, okay.
There's the next 2 buildings, and then there's the bank. So you're the Naples Hotel. I'm sorry, Tom, I mean, actually, no, it's not. Naples Hotel is here. You'll see in the future pictures as I start to draw this out. I mean, I've known that forever, but the Naples Hotel wasn't in that position. Actually, okay. But you get everybody understand where we are?
Yes,
Yeah. The new buildings and the bank are on top of the old Lions Foundation of the old buildings there. Not where you are. You're down further. I know it says that in some of your websites. Okay. 1872 to 1894, Orange Inn, construction and early ownership. So these are what I'm going to take you through. In 1872, during 1872 to 1879, the Orange Inn was built by H.H. Walters and lived in as his personal residence. 1879 through 1891, H.H. Walters sold it to William Munsell as residence. 1881, the Lewis brothers bought the Walters block, which is where the house was, where the 3-story building was, on Main and Mill Streets, called it the Lewis block. 1891, 1894, the Orange Inn was owned by George Remington, who fitted it up to be a boarding house. So one of the things I learned doing this latest detail dive is that the person who had the boarding house, we'll talk about in a minute, she didn't make it a boarding house. It was actually Mr. Remington who did, but it doesn't look like he ever opened it. He bought the whole block and put some additions on, but it doesn't look like he actually ran it as a boarding house. It's like she decided to actually buy it from him and do it. And then you can see here Mr. Waldress on the corner of South Main and Mill Street. This is when they opened. He opened that 3-story building again in 1973. And over here, H.H. Waldress is replacing the old Lion House, is repairing the old Lion House near his store. That's here. And then I thought this is cute. It is a fact that the jointed fishing pole was invented to carry under the coat on Sundays. I always get something out of it. All right, so this is where we're talking about now. You see, this is the 1874 map. You see Waldress's residence in the front there. It's Main Street, so that's the Orange Inn. In the back is when it said he moved the barns in the back. In the 1874, they showed the barns. There's the barn in the back. You can see there the Walters property, and you can see the hotel. The Jocko owned that piece of the property at that time. And you can see Walters still had the house over here. He still owned that in 1874. 1879, 1891, Walters sold it to William Munsell as a residence. Here's that proof. William Munsell has taken possession of the former residence of H.H. Walters, which he's purchased. W.W. Munsell has taken her, that's just another one of the same thing. And then this gets into a little more detail. Well, you can see a little better. This is 1886. You can see the shape of the Orange Inn there with the barn in the back. One of the things that, again, I noticed was that they had a skating rink right behind what's now the bar place, or the old jewelry store. Anyway. And then you can see here, this is where it starts to explain it, Tom. So there is the little Flory Park. There is the first building, the one I did the corbels on. That would have been the Lewis building. This was the Lewis block where they moved the Maxfield Bank into there. Then there's a little gap. And then you have the Joppa Hotel. And this little gap now is filled with another building. And then you've got the bank. And then you've got a little bit of walkway. And then you have your hotel. So even though the Joppa Hotel was pretty large, there might be some overlap, but they weren't right on top of the building.
Wayne, can you explain what a Sanborn map is?
Right.
They really got a lot of information in there for insurance purposes. They've got what the building material was, what the dimensions were, how many stories it was.
Yeah, and you'll find, like when they built your place, Tom, they actually had a gasoline tank stored underground outside for gas. Because they didn't, I mean, they had some gas in the streets, but they also, like a Polmanteer, pumped up gas tanks to get the gas fumes, and the lighting it was used was actually gasoline vapors, like a Polmanteer. But anyway, so yes, like you're saying, these maps from 1886 on are up online. They're the Sandberg maps. And like you said, they were insurance maps, so they probably had insurance people hired a map guy or gal to come here and write it all up so they could look at insurance risks and stuff like that. And it would say how many, what kind of fireplaces they had, how many they had, so there's lots of information on these charts. So again, at this point, this is now called the Lewis block. That became called the Benjamin block. And it says here, Walters sold the Orange Inn and William Munsell, and then the Lewis brothers bought the Walters block, and then they called it the Lewis block. So not only are the street names changing, but at some points they just talk about blocks, they didn't mention the street, so you have to kind of get used to knowing where the blocks, because if somebody bought a block, they've changed the name of the block to them. So it's like, okay, okay, so we glean the following. George Remington is now owner of the Benjamin block, and is fitting it up for a boarding house. As near as we can learn, there is not an empty house in this village. 1 year ago, there were several. So we're in that situation now, I think. So again, George Remington then fitted up the house as a boarding house. So he then took over the Orange Inn. This is an 1893 map picture. The skating rink's gone. Too bad. The Orange Inn is there, and as I mentioned, Remington fitted it up as a boarding house. He added that little section there, which you can see is now, it's kind of an overhang. If you go in the basement, you'll see it was kind of like built like almost the inside of a ship. It's actually supported on like a mansard roof upside down. And that was where you added kitchens, both the upstairs kitchen and the downstairs kitchen. So to make it into a boarding house, I guess they felt he needed a bigger kitchen. So it looks like that's what he did to make it into a boarding house. All right, so we're back now to Main Street again, around 1900. And I'll point out a few things here. Now you do have the Naples Hotel. Naples Hotel had actually a park next to it originally. So you've got the original Waltros building, which is starting to look a little shabby. You've got the Lewis building where the Maxwell Bank was. And now you've got a beautiful park. Then you get the Naples Hotel, the new one, absolutely new Naples Hotel. And then, of course, other things in the picture there. You've got the Lewis store already. And then, by the way, there's Bill Buchar right there walking across. I'm kidding. I just saw that little kid about how big kids Bill be when this. I figured, what the heck? I'll call it Bill Buchar. So someday you'll Google Bill Buchar and show that picture of him. So anyway, so you can see there, that's what it looked like in 1900. So at least his building was still there that he built. Other people were in it. Okay, so now we go to chapter 3. This is Orange Inn as a boarding house. 1894 to 1927, Clara Benjamin buys it and opens it as a boarding house business. For men only, apparently, and lives there. Now, this for men only, apparently, came from, I went through the kids' school. Bill Buchar's brother, Robert, I guess it was either an English teacher or history teacher. English teacher, and he had the students doing research in Naples. And so we have a copy of all the kids' research papers. And some of them are pretty good, some of them aren't even close. I mean, I shouldn't say some of them aren't close. There's sections of some of them that are right, but at least, like, they'll interview somebody who's really old and senile and say, explain to me about the Orange Inn. And they'll explain their own house. And I go, well, he's explaining his own house. That's what he's talking about, the old guy's talking about his own house. He's supposed to be talking about the Orange Inn, but it's okay. And the kid writes it down. So as long as you realize. But I thought that was really cute with the student said, she opens a boarding house business for men only, apparently, because it's true. All of her guests in the boarding house were men. And then 1927, though, she died there in the house. So she ran the business for however long that is. It's pretty long, but she died there. But now I'll take you through some of that detail. So there it is. George Remington has sold the Benjamin block to Miss Clara Benjamin, who occupies it as a boarding house. And she's really, at this time, they're talking about the Orange Inn. Over here, so this is where it starts to get, a lot of people are always interested, especially in Naples with all the ghosts that we talk about. Okay, so what happened in the house? Were there any ghost stories? I get that all the time at the end. I tell them, go to Naples. So this one, at sudden death, Mr. Dio Moore of Bluff Point, Lake Huka, came to Naples on Monday of last week with his son Henry, who had gone home on Saturday. Mr. Moore was not feeling well, and Harry hoped that a little visit to Naples would recruit him. He stayed with his son at the boarding house of Mrs. Clara Benjamin. On Wednesday night, he retired in his usual health, sleeping alone. Failing to come down to breakfast and not answering the calls, his room was entered and he was found in the bed dead. He had eventually not been dead long, and there was no evidence of any struggle. He was subject to heart disease, and that was without doubt the cause of death. And Coroner Wedling so decided and did not deem it necessary to hold an inquest. He was heard moving about in the night, but said nothing. So anyway, that's just that. And then the other thing interesting. Well, sorry.
Who was moving around, Harry or the dead guy?
No, the dead guy was moving around. Yeah, I guess it's hard to tell. And the thing over here was that when Clara Benjamin got the house from Remington, apparently Remington either died pretty quickly thereafter, and then his son tried to get things back out of the house, and she says no way, so he took her to court, and it's a whole court case where she apparently didn't have a case or something. So I just put that in there for future reference. Okay, another one here. This is now we're in, let's see the date, 1906. Some improvements about the town are worthy of mention. The front porch of Miss Clara Benjamin's boarding house has been doubled in width and is now very spacious. So the way the front porch looks must have looked different. I don't have a picture of what it looked like when it was first built. We have one of a picture when it was built after the new porch. And then this one here, Mrs. Clara Benjamin has lately added a first-class bathroom to her popular boarding house. So Mr. Parr did the plumbing, so you know who the good plumbers were then. So before then, I guess they had an outhouse, they didn't show those on the maps either. So here you go, this is a picture taken in 1900, and there's Mrs. Clara Benjamin on the front porch, and that's one of the most, beautiful pictures there. You can see, I don't think that's the outhouse, my guess is that's one of the barns in the back there on the left. And that's how the Orange Inn looks. It's just stunning, absolutely stunning. Okay, so now we keep going, 1907 to 1912. Mrs. Clara Benjamin's boarding house is being beautified by a fresh coat of white paint with green trimmings. People have asked me, what color was it? It was white with green trimmings. Obviously, I learned with this type of presentation, just put red squares around the things I share with you. There's more information here. Go back and read. At some point, we'll have this available, I'm sure, somehow. 2 weeks ago, we mentioned in these columns the illness of Frank Vallone, the LVRR fireman. Okay, so who stayed at the Orange Inn as a boarding house? The trains used to come into Naples, and they didn't just turn around and go back. There was a turnaround, but a lot of them stayed overnight, and they would stay at the boarding house. So they had a room in the air, and they had a room at the other end, where the other end of the trains were. And they would stay at one or the other, depending on when the train came to town, and then the next morning they would turn around and take it back out. So anyway, he was a fireman, which meant he stoked the fires and stuff. Became ill while on his run from Sayre to Naples that Saturday evening previous. He was brought to his boarding room, his boarding house, Miss Clara Benjamin's, where he died last Wednesday at 5:45 at the age of 25 years old. Wow. His wife, whom he married, I'm thinking, of course he married. The reporter had to fill that in. So probably his wife, March 1st, if you had let that little part out. So his wife, who he married, March 1st last, was notified of his illness and came on Monday following his being taken sick, and she was with him to the end, ministering to his wants and none other could. Last week, Tuesday evening, his mother came, bringing his family physician, Dr. Jones of Horseheads, who was in counsel with Dr. Barrage and our doctor. The cause of death, as revealed by the post-mortem examination, is given as peritonitis. Do we have a vaccine for that? Sorry. Followed by an abscess under his hip bone. So that's another person who died there. Chinese woman, young man. Over here it says, Miss Clara Benjamin is putting new large windows in the dining room for boarding house in Main Street and will redecorate and make other improvements. So the windows were, so if you want to hold the windows, were 1912. It was big, beautiful windows in front. Let's see, what's this? Cohocton. This is somebody I need to mention, because this was somebody special to Mrs. Benjamin. It says here, at the home of Mrs. Clara Benjamin, occupied the death Tuesday after, Laverne Polmanteer, at the home of Mrs. Clara Benjamin occurred the death Tuesday afternoon, June 29, 1926, of Laverne H. Polmanteer, following a brief illness. He was the second or eighth child of William Henry and Mary Bess Polmanteer, and was born on Lent Hill, town of Cohocton, on October 6, 1875. His mother died in 1888, and a short time later his father moved to Naples to enable the children to attend the local school. His father died again shortly after in 1898. For the past, so I'm flipping over to the other one, so for the past 18 years, Mr. Polmanteer had made his home at the boarding house of Mrs. Clara Benjamin in this village, and it is upon Mrs. Benjamin that the loss falls heaviest. So I started thinking, well, maybe because Mrs. Benjamin, I know her history, her husband died when they were young, and then her only daughter died right thereafter. So she was all by herself. And here's a man that lived in her house for 18 years and who dies, and she's brokenhearted. It turns out, though, and I looked at the age group, the age difference, she treated him like her son. She more or less adopted him. He died young, and so she was 25 years older than he was. So, because as you see, surviving Mr. Palmentier, we'll get to more detail on the story later, but I pretty much come to the conclusion that this was her stepson, unofficially. Because if you remember, after Clara, she sold it to Polmanteer. So she sold it to a Polmanteer. So when I saw that a Polmanteer died there, and then when she died, all of a sudden the Polmanteer's running the place, I started putting two and two together. It's part of that fog game there. So this is actually where the rest of the story is. So here he dies on July 7th, 1926. She dies on May 25th, 1927. And you know, when you have a spouse, a lot of times when the one spouse dies within a year, the other one does. That's why I was starting to think maybe he was actually her, like, you know, kind of spouse. But it turned out that age group didn't work. But Mrs. Clara Barton Benjamin, 75 years, was found dead in her home, which would have been the origin. Tuesday afternoon by author Polmanteer, who went there to deliver Mrs. Benjamin's mail. This was the son of the guy who had died the year before. He immediately summoned Corridor Stewart, who said that the cause of death was heart trouble. Funeral services will be held from the late home, officiating, and the burial will be in the Rose Ridge Cemetery. So I guess it was held at the Orange Inn. Mrs. Benjamin was born in Naples in 1852, the daughter of Alyssa and Clarissa Fisher Barker. She married Samuel Benjamin, December 23rd, 1874. Mr. Benjamin died July 24th, 1878, only 4 years later. Their only daughter, Ida, died in 1905. She is survived by one brother, Fred Barker of Naples, and one sister, whatever Halls. In the death of Mrs. Benjamin, Naples loses one of its oldest citizens. For over 30 years, she conducted the well-known Benjamin boarding house, the Orange Inn. The latch string was always open, and her place was noted for its hospitality. Everyone liked Mrs. Benjamin and was affectionately known by hundreds of travelers, men, and railroad men as Mother, which is another kind of thing that, you know, it's kind of like her stepson. Anyway, so she died in the home there. And then shortly thereafter, 1929, Orange Inn is named the Orange Inn. In the same year, author Polmanteer bought it. The son actually bought it, the one who used to deliver the mail. And this was the son of the guy who died. You know, he died, you know, the guy who died like 40 years old. The son was in his 20s then. And opened it as a restaurant, later sold alcohol. 1833 is what the student paper said, from people's recollection of, the older people's recollection of when he started selling alcohol. I found all kinds of alcohol permits, different dates, but those are in my papers. 1937, Mrs. Polmanteer dies. So this was basically the son of the man, Polmanteer, who lived in the house for 18 years. He ended up taking over the house. So the Orange Inn on Main Street in this village will open for regular business under the management of Mrs. Arthur G. Polmanteer and Mrs. Lawrence. The house, formerly the Benjamin boarding house, has received alterations and redecorations, and new furnishings have been added. Orange Inn is well named for the suggestion of orange color is to be found in many places, both inside and outside the house. It is listed by Winston Homes, whatever, as an approved wayside home. And that says over here, Mr. and Mrs. Oh, no, I read only the thing I circled. Orange Inn, next Saturday, June 15th. They will be able to accommodate a number of roomers, so people still stay there, and will also serve meals. We wish them success in their undertaking. So then we go to that chapter. 1930. These are some cute things that they put in the newspaper about this new place that the Polmanteers were opening up. Orange Inn will open soon. All your friends, please tell. A place to meet, a place to eat, a place to sleep real well. There's all kinds of cute stuff. On July 4th, Orange Inn will be open to the public. We will serve quick lunches catered to private parties, 6 to 12 hours notice, and will be prepared to accommodate roomers and overnight tourists. Our motto, home comfort at Orange Inn. And then that's them again. Over here, alterations are being made at the Orange Inn. The dining room being doubled in size, which is, when I think about that, it's not the expansion on the front porch where they just put that big ugly picture window. It's probably the archway inside. They opened up the parlor so it could also be a dining room, is what I think it's referring to here. Because in the pictures you'll see coming, the front porch is still beautiful. And then there's back at the home comfort idea at the top there. And then the idea of chicken dinners. The Orange Inn, Naples, New York, the Orange Inn will serve throughout the winter months Sunday chicken dinners. Only on reservations, not later than Friday evening of the week. Sunday steaks and roast dinners typical. So the idea of chicken dinners again. I know Bob and Bruce was big on chicken dinners, and you'll see here the sign says chicken dinners, private parties, Orange Inn. So the next picture, you'll see in the front right there.
Oh, wow.
That's the exact sign. So that gives you a scale. a little bit. This was up in the Red Mill, and I'm fixing the staircase, and I look up, and there it is. I'm like, oh my God, we're going to talk on this in 2 weeks. So I didn't quite clean it up a little bit, but there it is, and you can see that's what it's like. Now the other thing that the Polmanteers, Mrs. Polmanteer did primarily, very cute about other things, do a little sign on top of the door. You'll stop eventually, why not here? You can see it's starting to get really pretty, it's the, what I don't know what you call those things, the striped curtain things, it's starting to look very pretty. Versus, it was beautiful before when Claire owned it. She really starts to make it much more of a home. So the Orange Inn just installed new ornamental concrete steps in the front porch. So when you walk by, you see those crumbling steps on the front porch. They were put in 1836 or 1831. The Orange Inn has just installed a large new radio for entertainment for the guests. It was stolen a year later, just some radios around Naples. So it was probably a special radio, because this is 1930s. Probably in the Red Mill too, with all those radios. The Orange Inn specializes in chicken and steak dinners and grilled plate luncheons. 15 years has taught the proprietors, Mr. and Mrs. Polmanteer, how to serve their specialties well. Food preparation has always been under Mrs. Polmanteer's supervision, and there's a home-cooked goodness to an Orange Inn dinner. The rooms, as the name would indicate, are colorful and cheerful. Here, too, Naples wines are recommended to those who wish them, located on Main Street. I don't know why there's blank on there. Oh, maybe it's because they have to draw. No. Okay, I just want to make sure I don't lose that one. Okay, so this says Mrs. Polmanteer died. So they started there in 1930 or so. 7 years later, after all her work, she passes away at the Orange Inn. Early Sunday morning, November 28, 1937, occurred the sudden death of Mrs. Arthur Polmanteer, 58, at her home at the Orange Inn in this village. Death was caused by a heart attack again, which it is thought she suffered while she was retiring shortly after midnight. The body was found Sunday forenoon. Mrs. Polmanteer was an ardent Neapolitan and was well known for her writings on the early history of Naples. This was all news to me. Wait till you keep going. Many anecdotes of the pioneers and founders of our town have been preserved for posterity through her zeal and indefatigable work. She also wrote poetry, much of which has been published. Her last historical work, which is not completed, deals with the grape industry in Naples, where procured, and how, when, and by whom the many varieties of grapes were brought here. A subject which we believe no other writer has given more than passing notice. And of all the things I've learned in 15 years, that is so true. This Naples village was so responsible for the grape industry and what came later in the wine industry, and gets almost no credit. You can, right?
Do we know what her first name is? Or is it just Mrs.?
Mabel.
No, it's Mrs. Arthur.
It's actually Mabel.
That's a good name.
Mabel?
Yes.
Mabel, okay.
Okay,
Yeah.
good.
Mabel Alice Manahan. Yeah.
Great, great to know. So,
Buried in Rose Ridge.
so then I kind of dedicated this beautiful picture. So this was right before she died. Her last little note was, "He the Sunday and let the weary rest." And I said, a beautiful reminder of Mrs. Polmanteer's love with the Orange Inn. She did to it. It's gorgeous. So I checked those cars too, because the dates on the pictures that we got in our archives aren't exactly right. You see 1930 for the last one. So that's a 1931 Ford something. I checked to make sure. Okay, next chapter. So I call it On the Wild Side. I'm doing it for the kids report. It's pretty spunky. So 1939 to 1945, and when Harris purchases it, he sold food, less food, more booze. That's when the kid again. 1945 to 1946, then it was owned by Henry Foster Hudson, and in 1946 it was purchased by Harry and Raymond Davis. So it went through quite a few corners after that. This is just proof of that. Edward Harris of the Orange Inn. Oh, so Edwin H. Harris of the Orange Inn has a new pet, a young fox. It's not that interesting. And this is due to the present conditions, Orangin will close every Wednesday, effective December 2nd. So there's just proof that Edwin Harris owned it.
Very young business closed on Wednesday.
Then this is over here, it says, which I thought came out, which was pretty cool, that he said in one of his things, Naples active and attractive. I thought that was a nice little statement. Then it says here, so Mrs. Edwin Harris expects to leave today for their cottage. Harris will remain for a short time in the Orange Inn to assist the new owners, Mr. Fox Hudson. And then there talks more about it over there, was sold to the Hudsons. And then here, again, business changes are much more noticeable along Main Street. Edward Harris sold to Henriette Hudson of Bath, it's continuing. And then 1946, the Orange Inn has erected a new electric sign, and I think that's probably it up there. You see the Orange Inn's white there, but maybe that's even a newer sign.
Ice cubes for sale?
Yes, so they have the Orange Inn, legal beverages, so it kind of goes with the food
Ice
thing.
cubes for sale.
Ice cubes for sale. So that's just some proof. And then the next chapter, chapter 6, A New Beginning. It was purchased by Harry and Raymond Davis, and author Polmanteer dies, which is the latest in history on there. So Harry J. and Raymond G. Davis purchased the Orange Inn from Mr. and Mrs. Hudson in Naples last week. Messrs. Davis conducted the New Bride Hotel in Wayland before entering the United States Army. And then it says a project in interior decorating is underway at the Orange Inn. And you can see here, so I just started putting some ads. So he continued with the chicken and steak dinners in that time frame. And this is the article about Mr. Polmanteering dies. I'm not sure there's so much here, other than it's good history. There you go, Mabel, you got it right there. In 1898, he was united in marriage with Mabel Manahan. She died in 1937. Good for you guys. So, now we jump ahead to 1963, and there is Mr. Waltross's building. So Edwards Hayes store, originally built by Waldros, 1963, it was abandoned, and soon to become Lord Park.
You can see our tower there.
Yeah, our
Yeah,
tower's
the
there.
tower's in the
Yeah.
background.
Yeah.
So I found this picture was on Bill Burr highlighted in his office. I took a picture. I don't know if you guys have one of these.
Yeah.
Okay. And there's a beautiful picture, 1976, of that mid-century modern bar, which is still in really good condition and still in there, and it's probably worth a fortune. Because, you know, you just don't find a bar like that. And while I was working for Joel, Christine, my wife, I told her there's the original cash register is in the basement, stuck in a crawl space. I happened to notice, and she goes, "Oh, that would be great. We should see if we can get that." So I asked Joel if it's okay for me to take the old cash register. So I have that for if anybody wants to buy it, put the old cash register. It's not as nice as yours now. It's not as old, but it's still an old cash register. So, and then here's a picture of Mr. Ray and Harry Davis in front of the Orange Inn there. And there's their signs up there too.
So the
Signs
glasses
there, and then
appear
there's some
this
more
way.
stuff about, you know, continuing on. And I think this would probably be, if I get the wrong.
That's our family, yeah.
Yeah, that's it.
The Davises are
This
here.
is Harry Davis.
Oh, really? Oh my God, see, so I got, you look like the pictures. Well, that's super. Yeah, there you are, and then your brother, okay. he
No,
passed
that's not
away.
him, that's his father.
That's
That's the one by the bar.
Oh, okay, so
Right
you
there.
guys are these.
He was
See, I noticed there were the kids of the other.
Oh, Harry Davis Jr. that says, so
Yeah.
you were behind the bar?
I was behind the bar.
Okay.
Cool.
That is cool. So see, now we're getting into the time zone where people can help me out. This is where Bill Warhol really shined. I sit and think, oh, you remember so-and-so's?
December 14th, yeah.
But this thing forced me to learn about the days. So there's 1970.
Times we have
Oh, this was
that.
cool. 1981. Back in the grade. That is, I've been got his albums now. But it says right under that too, Bat's last appearance of the, Bat's last appearance at the Orange Inn before he moves to LA, his new album will be available. So that was his last, one of his last gigs here. And of course, he passed away after that, but there you go, Bat. And then these are just some ads that I pulled out again, some great food.
Mooney
I
was there on too.
like it over there, breakfast and lunch and serve daily, there's a buck contest for the one who brings in the biggest buck, and the Orange Inn, Love Club, and all these different things. The other thing is, I think that's about probably the same time as the sports. Now, there were lots of sport team information about the Orange Inn sports, And I came in and saw this beautiful jersey and thought, oh, I should put all that in this, because they were really excited about sponsoring different sports, high school sports teams, or that age group. And so, anyway. 1986 to 1990, a new purpose. 1986, Kevin Ruger took over ownership. 1987 to 1990, Lynn Randall opened it and operated as a youth center called Always Friends. You guys remember this probably somewhere?
Yeah.
See, this was shocking to me to go through this. Okay, so there's the deed transfer proof that Kevin Ruger bought the Orange Inn, or transferred to him in 1986. And then he posted these little things here. The first one says, "Come rock at the Orange Inn, live bands are coming soon." The next one says, "Come rock at the Orange Inn, live bands are here." It's posted before he had any live bands, and then the next couple articles later, or issues later, he had some. So he continued with that, and these are some more just postings of his. What I also thought was really touching was there were a lot of benefit things done for the people of Naples when somebody died at a young age. That's what's going on over there. They would do auctions there for the family and auction off things for Neapolitans who passed away at a young age. So there's just some more ads there about that time frame. And then this was the interesting one, like I said, about learning about this Always Friends. So in 1987, this mentions it here, Lynn, who was also a real estate broker with me, owned the Orange Inn from 1986 to 1990. Now this article is about him buying the Naples Hotel, but this was just some part of the article mentioned that he did that and operated it as a youth center called Always Friends. So I thought, oh great, I can start Googling Always Friends and start finding things. And people were talking to me while I was doing this. I would meet people and say, oh, they used to have all kinds of pinball machines in there. We used to go there as high school kids. And I was like, really? And so I looked at the pictures that I found online on Facebook of people at the Orange Inn having parties and stuff, and in the background were some pinball machines. I thought, some dart throwing machines. But maybe that's what they mean, until I found this. And so you can see there, this was actually an article where somebody interviewed one of the people who was a young person who participated in Always Friends at the Orange Inn under the leadership of Jason and Lynn Randall. And this is what she said: Naples doesn't need condos, townhouses, or craft markets. I could always find a craft to do at the Brown House, or get a lucky rabbit's foot from Dinsler's deer skin shop. The festivals were a once-in-a-year treat of fun, and games with bubblegum blowing contests for the kids and tobacco spitting contests. Of course, Saturday morning leagues at the bowling alley for kids were always fun, and watching our folks play baseball there was a great social outing too. We could always waste some quarters at the Always Friends on video games and Cokes. I could go on and on and on. See what wonderful memories our quaint community has given us. So this article was pretty successful. There were a few articles about people who were touched by opening it up as Always Friends. So I didn't even know that. That was just completely new for me. So then I couldn't find anything 1991 to 2005, but I know there's people in this room that can help me.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. I'll move ahead. Here's where Harry Davis,
Crowley.
right, died. He was a veteran, and they had a really nice article here about him in his memorial service. And then to the class of, you see, they were also very promoting constantly, the Orange Inn was constantly promoting the young people in the village. And then here's in 1904, somebody maybe had a little too much to drink or something, and kind of swiped the chimney there, which later had to come down. It just talks about that. And then here there's a karaoke contest, so they even did karaoke at the Orange Inn. So 2006 to 2013, I call that the last years. 2006 to 2007, ranging for Build a Dream. More stuff I had no idea about. 2007 to 2013, Sharon and Alan McCall. Now, I did my best to get this all accurate. I'm not sure, as I do this more and more, I'll get more information. I put this one up on here because it said Olson, Baker, and Gardner. My wife and I love that band. So we used to go there in the 80s.
We were their neighbors.
Yeah. But they were part of our running club,
Yeah.
Paulson was. And so we became good friends with them. So we went to see them.
Used to live in Darrell Abraham's house.
So they were coming down here. And then this is a really sad story. I didn't imagine you all know about the Wayne Shank. So he bought the Orange Inn, 2005. Then he did a scratch off and won $1 million. But he had terminal lung cancer, and his parents had died from terminal lung cancer. So he wasn't able, so here it is, 3 months later, he's about ready, he wins it on like February. He owns the Orange Inn, which is his dream to own the Orange Inn. He's got to give that up, but then he wins this money, and he was asking if he could get it all in one lump sum instead of over 5 years, because of the fact that he needed some kind of special treatment that he couldn't afford. And the administration that administered this scratch-off thing said they didn't have the authority to do that, but they will work to give authority for the next time this happens, that the board can actually make an exception. Apparently they did, and they wanted to name it in his name, but he didn't want to be named in his name. So he ended up marrying his high school sweetheart before he died. He died 3 months after he won the money. And so he married her, and I hope she inherited, she then got the money. So there you go. So that's an amazing origin story.
Yep.
And then I found a token picture online, and somebody sent me one. And then the next people who took over the Orange Inn here, at least the way I could see that, is scheduled opening, whatever, it would be the Sharon and Alan McCall. And that's where the sign with the sunglasses I can take from, which you'll see in a little while. And they started using that as the logo. And I believe that's who owned it when we bought the Orange, or when we bought the Maxfield Inn, because she looks familiar, and she took it on a tour, and she just wanted me maybe to buy it. And so do you all know, do you know if she was the last person, she and her husband, to own the Orange Inn before Joel bought it? Okay. So these are some nice, beautiful, I'm getting almost done here. These are some beautiful pictures of the way Orange Inn was there that I could find throughout the web on Facebook, etc. Just people having a blast. Bands,
Good times.
you know, so many people just having a blast. And they were Neapolitans mostly too, you'll notice. You know, some of the other places, it's not necessarily Neapolitans. And so there's there are lots of guitar players, and there's that beautiful bar. And I think that's her, isn't that her? Yeah, that's what I thought. Because that's the lady that took me around and showed me upstairs and take me up to the cupola. And that's the last picture I have of that chapter. So that's pretty much them saying goodbye. Another thing I want you all to know, if you probably don't know, before I even knew anything about coming to Naples, I read an article in the paper, in the Democrat and Chronicle, about a building that was built in Victor, and that they used the Orange Inn in Naples as the model. And I was like, wow, that must be someplace at Orange Inn, you know? So there it is today. So I went and took a picture of it and showed it to Joel and said, don't you tear that thing down. You're copying it. You're going to... Anyway, so this building's in Victor across from the Eastern Mall, and they use the Orange Inn as a model. Looks a lot like it. Matter of fact, some people that are looking at interested in the Orange Inn will say, oh, yeah, that punk should be. Anyway, okay, chapter 3, or chapter 10, I call 2014 to 2025 silence. And that's like after that cartoon character when he died, and they showed all his cartoon characters, not the cartoon character, the cartoon artist when he died, they showed all of his art, all of his cartoon characters standing in a group sad, and the word was silence. That's what I think about now. 2014, when Joel and Julie Smith bought the Orange Inn, it basically went silent. And there you go. This was from, you know, when that right around 2020. There's some interest. A picture of the Orange Inn there, just sitting silent. It says closed for renovations. It's the way it's been for that many years. As long as I've been restoring the inn, it's been closed, except for the 1 year I got an overlap. And I went over there when we first bought the inn, and I went in the front door, and there was a beautiful Victorian lamp sitting there, right in the front entrance, and I just stared at it and said, I love Victorian. I didn't know I loved it so much, but I love that light fixture. So when, after Joel took it over, you know, I looked in the windows, because he had gutted it, and in there was that light fixture just thrown on the bar. So I went and saw him and said, can I have it? And he goes, no. Okay. So then a year later, I was buying a dishwasher from him in the store out there. And he said, you were the one that wanted that light, right? He says, yeah. He goes, how much did you give me for it? I said, $100. He goes, let's go get it. So anyway, so that's why it's hanging in the inn now. My inn. So it reminds me of the Orange Inn. So these are just comments from people. What was the building before? I had a heck of a good time there. I so agree with you. I know I'm not alone in feeling sick with disappointment every time I walk through the building. So much potential to be enjoyed by people. And it just sits there falling apart every year with no sign of actual activity or word of any vision for its future. I didn't even see more, maybe so sad. Always Friends, remember the arcade there? Okay. So that's what it's look like. I did an AI on the Orange Inn. It says property is for sale right now. If anyone wants to buy it, $200,000. Former use restaurant pub formerly known as the Orange Inn. Condition, the building was completely gutted and is in a blank slate for new owners to customize. I think that'll notice it's posted beam, which is really a treat. It's not balloon frame, even, no, I'll stop there, which is good because it's going to, it's a pretty easy fix-up job versus balloon frame can be really nasty based on how the shape of the foundation is. It has 2 included lots in the back. It has flat road frontage, potential use of brewery, restaurant, retail stuff. AI amazing. So here's some pictures of it now. I have took some pictures inside before they cleaned it up for the real estate pictures. There's what's left of the orange curtain. You'll see it's completely gutted in there pretty much. The other thing that's beautiful is the lath was the stretch lath, not the striped lath, which again was unusual for that time frame. By now, in the early mid-1970s, they went to the cut lath, so you can pretty much tell. This is where they take a board and they drive chisels in it and spread it to make lath. So it looks like the inside of a tree house. It's just beautiful. A lot of it's gutted. And actually, I have a beautiful picture where a vine had grown into this room. And it decided to live in there for 10 years, and it was just up the walls. It looked like the inside of a greenhouse. It was so good. So this is where I think they widened, there's the dance floor in the back, in the front here, but where she widened to that archway to make the 9-1 bigger. This is what it looks like today, by the way. These pictures are up online for the sales. The box is still here, as I mentioned. And it looks kind of sad. But we were up there 2 weeks ago. I was almost bought it last 2 weeks ago, and we didn't. Looking at out the cupola, and there's my other favorite inn. And look at this beautiful picture of this building. So you have a crow's view up there. It's stunning. It'd be a great place for an artist or somebody or a writer to sit up there and see Naples. You see a whole different perspective. It's so beautiful. So, I was careful where I put the slide because Joel's kind of a friend. So why is it called the Orange Inn when it looks and feels so blue these days? And this is something I wrote after I did the photoshopping and made them brown. The Orange Inn has always been a place where Neapolitans made friends, enjoyed friends, and formed adopted families. It served this purpose with honor for 150 years. It wants and knows that it needs to keep doing that, bringing us together as a village. It feels sad sitting empty and rotting and being constantly threatened of being torn down. It knows that the Naples people love it, have always loved it, and no longer are there. That's why. It's so good. And then I photoshopped this. So I Googled orange with hope. And I got this little guy, orange with hope. So there you go, that's the end of my talk.